mobs are much slower to reproduce. The Ender Dragon.
We're back with another top 5 more things that don't make sense, and yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. Let's just get right into it.
Number 10.
Into the number 5 spot is something that isn't too big, but it's something that just doesn't really make too much sense. The military bases and mercenary bases have troops such as, well, tanks and stuff like that to spawn in. However, they have also like anti-air guns, but also some like cannons and some like RPG looking missile weapons. And for some reason, they don't use those weapons, even though no matter how far or how close you place these bases that are next to the path where the enemies are, or just how close the enemies are to those bases, no matter what, those guns are just completely useless. They don't even aim at enemies. It's weird because, I mean, like, these guns were mainly designed to, you know, combat the threat or whatever. And for whatever reason, they don't use these base guns. And of course, I get it. If these guns were able to actually target these enemies, aka zombies and stuff like that, it would propose a bit of a problem, since that would still like consume some spaces, or at least some room on where you can place the troops on the map, especially as close to the path as possible, and all of these strategic places. Because if these bases were able to actually deal damage to enemies, people would most likely place these bases a lot closer to the path, and this would propose a problem to where you couldn't really place any troops near to the path. So I guess that would kind of make sense, or at least that does make sense. But still, it makes you wonder why these weapons wouldn't have like a bigger range, or at least actually target the threat instead of just being decorations.
Number 9.
Into the number 4 spot, we have a forgotten type of troop, and that is the Executioner. You remember the last time you used this guy? Yeah, I didn't think so. Anyway, that's not important. What is important is how exactly does his hatchet actually, you know, flung itself to the enemies and also between them, and somehow comes right back to the Executioner. Now, I know this is a game where nothing is supposed to make sense. This is a fictional world, and God knows where, probably like Fallout New Vegas, but I don't know, that's just a guess. Anyway, so yeah, how exactly does this guy's, first of all, hatchet hit an enemy, or just fly, hit an enemy, and then pretty much just go right back to him? Now, this gets even more complicated, or just even stranger, when his range is increased, and also when he is able to hit even more targets. That makes me think he probably has some sort of like magical or like telekinesis powers in order to do that. It is worth to mention that at minimum the hatchet can weigh from around 1.5 pounds, which is more than likely way heavier for, you know, the wind to be able to like make this thing fly, and will most likely just fall to the ground instantly the second he throws it, or not just instantly, but pretty much after a few seconds. But yeah, this is something that pretty much confused me ever since I unlocked the Executioner, as well as the very first time I ever saw him. I was like, whoa, he's throwing a hatchet? Well, how is that even possible? How is it able to hit multiple enemies in a row and, you know, somehow go back to the Execution?
Number 7.
Coming into the number 3 spot is an actually just doesn't make sense one at all. In the U-turn map, if you go over to this retail store at the front, there is a bit of a bounty thing for a zombie, which says, wanted zombie that escaped, reward $10.
Say psych right now, dude.
Which makes no sense whatsoever. First off, why would you exactly be wanting the locals, or, you know, the public to be wanting to search for this thing when it's, you know, a zombie that escaped and is insanely dangerous? Or probably, I don't know, this is America where everyone has access to shotguns or whatever. But anyway, the other thing that doesn't make sense is, why is the reward so shit? Is this a challenge in TDS? Because it is $10. Wouldn't you want a, you know, zombie that escaped that can literally kill people, or even make them into another zombie that is insanely dangerous? Wouldn't you want, I don't know, the bounty to be like a few 100,000 or even to a few million? Because I mean, like, for a reward of $10, no one's gonna be doing that, pal. Just trust me, ain't no one doing that. Also, the last thing is, if a zombie did actually escape and was, you know, on the run or whatever, and the government or whatever authorities don't even know where it is, wouldn't they be issuing a good old-fashioned stay-at-home order, which I assume is kind of what it is supposed to be, where it goes into lockdown, quarantine type of thing like that, and you know, makes it so where the public can actually stay indoors and not go looking for an actual zombie that can kill them. I don't know, but the one thing that just mainly confuses me is why is the bounty reward so shit? I believe they should have probably changed it to like, I don't know, 1M, which stands for 1 million at minimum, but for 10 bucks, ain't no one gonna be looking for that guy.
Number 12.
This is something that also extremely confuses me, which is how exactly or why exactly cannot the Ace and Pursuits, why can't they be placed on buildings? Well, Ace Pilot is kind of obvious because I mean like it needs to be like a little runway where they can have like a long road to be able to like drop down, slow down, and be able to land perfectly, while the Pursuit on the other hand needs to like, you know, get like a nice bit of slow movement and then just immediately drop down. And the Pursuit actually makes a lot more sense. Why can't you place the Pursuit, you know, helipad on a building? That is theoretically one of the best places to actually place a landing vehicle, or at least an air vehicle, mainly because if you're like trying to evacuate people from like a building, they could, you know, use a fucking helicopter, and also a helicopter can land on buildings, especially if a city is like super crowded with like skyscrapers or buildings that are like right next to each other. New York is what I'm basically saying. It is crowded with buildings, and you're telling me you can't place a helipad on a building? It doesn't make sense whatsoever. Now, I know the reason why is mainly because it's not a cliff unit or a unit that you can place on high ground, but it doesn't make sense when this cliff unit, pretty much this Pursuit, doesn't really change anything apart from just making the buildings look a lot cooler, because I mean, it's on a building and stuff like that. But I gotta admit, the helipads look way cooler on a building, and it's really weird on how you can place them so close to each other without, you know, the helicopters crashing into.
Number 1.
Check this out.
And finally, last but not least, we have how come troops cannot see us? Are they necessarily blind or something like that, or are we just like right next to them and they're just like, holy Jesus Lord Almighty, he's big, but we cannot make eye contact or something like that? And also, why can't we necessarily intervene with like the enemies that are pouring in? Shouldn't we want to like, you know, help out our troops instead of just standing there T-posing, just watching them, creeping the hell out of them as their teammates are literally popping out of nowhere? They're probably going to think it's a simulation or whatever. But this is something that's also been confusing me, because I mean, like, since we are literally super big and also these enemies are quite dangerous, especially like for an example the tank enemy, why can't we like intervene and tackle this guy and start to beat him up? Or even all the other final bosses, like for an example the Fallen King. We are pretty big just like them, so why can't we like throw down them and just try to help out our teammates, especially, or at least our minions, especially when our minions are literally using bullets to kill these things, and when we could be just like hammering these guys with our fists and like using their own weapons against them and try to like epic own them, kind of. This is something that also doesn't make sense, especially when, you know, they can't even see us, or maybe they can see us but we just can't make eye contact with us for some reason. And also, like, how are we like standing so close to them and they just still won't acknowledge our existence? And I know it's a game, we're not supposed to interact with them or not even interfere, apart from the updates where they added in gadgets where we are kind of able to interfere, but still, why can't we throw down with like the Fallen King for an example? That would be awesome.